be a possibility. Let's try to give it a go. It took many turns. The book was written one way. We found a publisher. They wanted nothing to do with that book. We basically tortured this woman sitting next to you. I'm surprised she's still standing. It was quite an ordeal. In some ways, I think more difficult than writing, brutal. But she stood with us. She offered us courage. She offered us support. Many times we ended phone calls crying. Karen and Nancy both admitted that writing is a healing process, but it resurrects a lot of things, and that's what happened. Phyllis became our therapist. She became our advocate, and I'm so grateful that she believed in us and made this successful. There will be a second book. I'm telling you right now. She's not ready yet, but every email I slip it in. I say, think about it, and what about this? And, she keeps an open mind. So that's my hope, and I'm just so thankful and honored to be here tonight, and thank you for such a warm welcome.
Okay, well, those are my ladies. I'd love to hear some questions. Does anybody have any questions? Anything? Yes.
What grade do you teach?
I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th in a Boston public school English language art.
Yes.
Okay, so I actually have two. The first one is, what do you ladies think is what's happening in your area now? The prices of real estate, just everything that's, the people who moved into your neighborhood, has it changed dramatically, is the first question. And the second question I have is, your children sound very young, I don't know how old your children are, but have your children read the book? Did they know about what was happening, your upbringing, before they read the book? Did you have to now tell them what happened? Did they have a different understanding of your life after reading this book, or being, forced to understand that what kind of the violence you guys grew up with?
Yeah, I have 4 children. My son is 38. My oldest daughter is 33, 31, and our youngest just turned 21, which is fun. My 3 oldest, they knew, because some things had come out. Actually, when I was 30 years old, and my sister Maureen, who passed away in May, she was 40, and we were in my mother's parlor, and my mother and my father were there. And my father was saying something, whatever, and Maureen said to him, "And you know what you did to us, and you know why you you love the girls so much more." And he just put his head down and he said, "I'm sorry." That was as close as we ever got to an apology. My mother still didn't believe it, because at the time my other sister Patty, who passed away since, she said that it never happened, we were lying. So it was a year after my father died, and I got a phone call at work. I worked at University Hospital, and my mother said, "I know what he did to you," Patty told me. I went home, I cried, I felt bad, I didn't know that, it had happened to her. And my mother was like, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I said, "Maureen and I came to you 30 and 40 years old, and you didn't believe us. So if I came to you as a 10, 11-year-old, my mother was whopped, she really was. But my kids, I did tell them, because different things were coming out. And then, of course, the book would be coming out, and I didn't go into details because I didn't want to embarrass them, but they knew, they felt bad, because, of course, someone hurt your mother. They felt bad and stuff, and my kids have been very supportive. They've all read the book. I don't think Katie, the youngest, the oldest ones have all read the book. Jessica, she's a nurse, my daughter Jessica, and she just said, "Ma, I'm proud of you." She said, I'm just so proud of you, because I wasn't sure over the course of the years how it was going to come out, because there was different changes, and she said, but she goes, "I'm so proud of you." She said that you were able to, come out of that, and come out good. So, but no, they it was hard to tell them, you know, because Joe's been their dad for 23 years. And they look at him and he's just this great guy, and it's hard for them to imagine that somebody's father could be like that, you know. But no, they were okay, and they loved me and I loved them, and you know, I got through it. You know, my niece is here. My niece lived with me off and on most of her life, you know. So, you know, she would get it just as much as my kids got it. I was very strict with them. But I would never let anybody hurt my kids, touch them, anything. When Joe and I started dating, and I knew it was getting serious, I told him, I said, you'll never put a hand on any of my kids. I said, I'm telling you that right now. He said, I would never do that. I goes, well, I'm just letting you know. You don't ever put a hand on my kids because it's the day you take your last breath. You know? I mean, my mother said to me one day, I was at her house, and you know, it's funny because as much as I didn't, you know, my parents, I still had loyalty to them because they were my parents, and my mother said to me, she says, was I a good mother? And I just looked at her and, excuse my language, I said to her, I said, you couldn't wipe my ass when it came to being a mother. I said, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that maybe you didn't know some things, considering this apartment is so massive, you know. I says, but the physical beatings that you initiated, I said, no man would ever touch my kids like that. I said, and you initiated them. Because she did, she was just, and I could never figure it out because it wasn't like she was abused, she was pampered. You know what I mean? She was one of 9 kids, and she was pampered because she had spine injuries and stuff. So she never had to do anything. She had this, you know, but she just, I don't know, like, she was just evil. You know, they made a great couple. You know?
I'll answer about the gentrification. I personally don't like it. I mean, I understand that there's absolutely nothing you can do about it, but it's interesting because I have younger great nieces and nephews, and I'm in the car one day with my nephew who's 7, and they live in Braintree, which is a suburb of Boston. I'm not sure if anybody, like, if people know where's where. So I'm driving with them, and I'm not sure what I said, maybe car or something, and he said, why do you talk like that? And I'm like, why? What did I say wrong? To a 7-year-old. So you're kind of losing like the Boston accent and everything because people are moving in that do not have Boston accents. So a part of us is really gone. But when we're done with this generation, it's gone. And it was interesting because he's 7. I'm like, why? How do I talk? So it is. So, you know, and they are priced people. It's you can't afford there if you didn't own a home. And I'm sure it's happening in a lot of places. It's not just necessarily South Boston, but we're all just moving to Braintree.
Any other questions? Yeah.
How long did it take to write the book?
How long did it take? Oh, God. At least 6. It's had several, it really was originally just going to be a book about Anna. And then we got another publisher who said, well, let's include a few others, and then we did, and then there were a couple of others that didn't quite work out. So I'd say about 6 years at least. At least. She thinks we're going to write another one. When she says something, it happens, so I'm shaking. Any other questions? Yes, Sarah?
So, Anna, what will the next subject be that you want us to write about?
That's still in the making. I don't know. I'm really trying to persuade my husband to get in on this, but he says he's done with books and TV, and he's a father now again, and not to, but we're really thinking hard. I don't know. My hopes was that we would never forget the old Southie, and that's not how this book turned out. It turned out, I guess, how it was supposed to, and looking back, I'm grateful that the book was not only about me, especially where I have babies now. But I'm not quite sure, but there will be another one. I know it.
Save your seat. Anyone else? Yes, way back there.
Yeah, I have a question for Karen. Hi. I read your book, and all of you are fascinating, including women that aren't here tonight. All of you are fascinating, loved every part of it, learning about your life in childhood. But Karen, you fascinated me the most. You talked about how your father was very read all the time, that you always like books in your hand. And 2 books, one I had to look up on, and Google it, I didn't know what book it was, James Brooklyn. Right, I didn't know about that last generation, I love it. But, I looked up, and I wanted to find out about it, I got the summary of it, and then in Cold Blood, of course, like the recording, we all know.
In Cold
And I
Blood.
feel like you those books were reflective of your life because the alcoholism, because the abuse, the physical abuse, all the characteristics of it. Did that relate to you? They started putting it slow, and you read a lot of books, and those 2 books stuck in your head, or those ones you mentioned.
Could you repeat the question?
We can't hear you.
We can't.
There was 2 books that stood out that I read when I was a kid. And one of them was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I love that book. And the other one was like in Cold Blood, Truman Capote. So I went from one extreme to the next. I didn't relate because I was a kid when I read them. Because I started reading really young. I was like about 4 years old when I started reading. And I used to belong to the summer reading club at the library every year and all that stuff. I love to read. My father, he was self-taught. He dropped out of school in like the 6th grade. And that's how he learned everything, from reading. So he could talk to anybody on any subject, and he could take the pros and the cons. He could, argue each point. I mean, he was smart that way. But no, it didn't relate to me because my mother and father didn't drink. They didn't drink, the only thing my father did was smoke. Because it was like, you could almost make an excuse for him if he was a drunk, but he wasn't, so, that was another thing that was strange, because people would say, like, did your father ever drink? And no, never did. Never drank.
I have time for 2 more questions. Yeah, yes.
Yes, I'm wondering if you think that the violence in all these homes is a product of the environment. What's your opinion, your personal opinion of they're growing up in a certain environment or because of the constitution?
In my house, I'm only talking about my house, no one else, it was the violence. Because that's what, my father used to push back the furniture. All 3 of my brothers were boxers. And he used to push back the furniture if they were having an argument. And he would, pit them against each other. You're not as good as this one, or, this one's better than you, whatever. And like I said, and he taught me how to fight. And that was his famous line, either you beat them or I'm gonna beat you. And he would tell me what to do if it was a girl I was fighting, what it would do if, it was a guy. And many times I went home from fights, and I would pop my knuckle out of place, and I'd have him, pop it back in. And it didn't faze him. All right, you're taking off my shoes, my sneakers, throw them in the washing machine because they were all bloody. Because I might have just put the boots to somebody. That didn't faze him. Just like with Kevin, I always said he was prouder of Kevin than my 2 brothers that got full scholarships and graduated Harvard. And Kevin was the one he was the proudest of, because that was his mentality. My brother Kevin's very smart. Like, he's very smart. Kevin could have went into Harvard if he wanted to, but Kevin decided he wasn't going to wait on tables because he was doing it, and some kid in the, the lunchroom kind of snapped his fingers at him, whatever, and Kevin hit him in the head with the tray. So that was the end of his career at Harvard. I got accepted into Radcliffe. I got accepted into Radcliffe. I could have walked right in, because especially with my brothers, graduating Harvard. But I didn't. My whole thing was to get out of that house. I just wanted to get out of that house.
Okay, one last question.
Question. With all of you that wrote this, going through, sorry.
I know. She lived it with me, that's why.
Going through all this with you guys, Mrs. Young, and Uncle Kevin. Like, I'm very proud of all of you. But, with as much as it brought up for you, do you have closure now? Like, do you feel better that you talked about it and you got it out? Like, or do you think you'll ever have closure with all of this?
I told you that I forgave them a long time ago. I forgave them a long time ago. There's always one in the family.
Well, like I said, when Kevin, actually, your uncle, yeah, he's your uncle, was the one who had called me about the book, and somebody had asked this question, and I'm like, I'll explain that after, about writing the book, and you don't have to tell everything, you can tell what you want, and blah, 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 blah. But I did have to say, I'm not sure, I need to speak with my family about this, because they have, my siblings have children, and their children are gonna be reading this, and then it's gonna, not everybody would be happy that you're resurrecting things. Some of it's about other people's families in the town that you lived in, so I tried to be as sensitive and gentle as I could. And so yeah, I guess there's a sense of closure, simply because of my girlfriend who called that day and told me that it opened her eyes for the courage that all the women in the book had, and it helped her relate to something that happened to her. So yeah, it's awesome if it helps people, and a little bit of closure. Yeah, I think. How about you guys?
Oh, yes. I was grateful that the book was not only about me towards the end. So, yeah, definitely. But fearful growing up in the town, and I go to the supermarket, I see some of the people who were in the book, and, yeah, you're fearful, but it turned out in a good light. So, yeah, but there was closure.
Okay. Thank you very, very much.
I can't thank you ladies enough for sharing your life stories and all the emotion that's gone through this room tonight. Anna, Karen, Nancy, it really is very, very helpful, and I thank you so much. And Phyllis, I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. Thank you. I remember many, many years ago, you and I went to lunch. You were talking to me about trying to find a publisher. You'll never have to do that again. You are a bestseller author. I'd like to just mention the next events coming up. Meredith Goldstein